Hi there Booktube, it's Eleanor here and today I'm going to be doing the soundtrack of my life tag. This was created by Jenni King. She's a really great booktuber and although she didn't tag me in this, I really wanted to do it, so I'm doing it. So thank you Jenni for creating this and I hope you enjoy the soundtrack of my life. So the first question for this is opening credits, favourite childhood book. So I'm going to show you a book series that I loved as a child. I don't know if they're still around now, but I kept these two for my daughter when she's a bit older. And they are Biscuit, Buttons and Pickles, and they're by E.J. Taylor, and this one is called The Thorn Witch and this one's called The Ragdoll Press. And I just absolutely adore these stories. They're full of pages with really nice illustrations and they're about two dolls and very good stories, and I just remember loving these and I've kept them since I was a child, so they would be probably my favourite childhood memories. Next is Waking Up, a book that got you out of a reading slump, and I think most recently I was in a little bit of a slump and Marie Ratowski's Winner's Curse, Winner's Crime books really got me out of that slump. They're great books, they're really intriguing, they're quite fast paced, they're just the type of books I like and need to get me out of a slump, and they left me wanting more, which is what takes me back into reading, so I really enjoyed those. Next is a book you had to read for school and you ended up loving. And I think for me, looking back on it, probably Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck was that book for me. I did find that a lot of books I read at school, we read to death and analysed so much that I just couldn't get into them ever again. But I remember really enjoying Of Mice and Men, so that would probably be my pick for that one. Next would be an author you love so much you want to read all of their books, and for this one I've got sort of a little, not a cheat, but I've got two books, two authors. Firstly, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Unfortunately for me this is the only book, however I've heard that on July 14th there is a sequel to this coming out and it's called Go Get a Watchman. I've seen it's on pre-order on Amazon, so I'm hoping it's a real book that's going to be coming out, because I will definitely be getting it because I absolutely adore this. And I came to this later in life. I hadn't read it until maybe a year or so ago, but I absolutely love this story and I love the film as well, and if you haven't read it you really should. So the other author who's a lot more prolific, that is Margaret Atwood, and this is my copy of The Handmaid's Tale, which is the first book I read by her that I absolutely loved, and so it got me wanting to read all of her other books. Next is Fight, and that is your book with the favourite action sequence in. I think for me at the moment, I'm really enjoying Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson, the Reckoners series, but Steelheart specifically, I just think their action sequences are really fun, really action-packed, and just, you know, fly by the seat of your pants type things. And I heard someone else say recently how much they enjoyed the fact that, you know, you're fighting one of these big bad epics that's got all these mean powers and you're throwing cherry Kool-Aid water balloons at them, because that seems to be what causes their weakness. So I'm really loving this, and I think the action scenes are great. Next up is Break Up, a book or series that you're not intending to finish, and for me that was a book I read quite recently called Nowhere by John Robinson. It was a bit of a meh book for me. I didn't really enjoy it. It was a YA type book, and yeah, just the whole plot and premise I just didn't find interesting enough for me to continue with that series. Next up is Hanging Out with Friends, a book that you think everyone should read. Well, as I've said before, my book for that would have to be To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I think everyone should read this book. I just think it's brilliant. So read it, read it, read it. Next is Break Up, a book that had you crying. And, you know, I do have tears in my eyes quite often with books, but sometimes I think it just depends when I'm reading them and how I'm feeling on the day. If I've had a tough day with Matilda and she's had lots of tantrums, then maybe I'm going to cry anyway, even if it's not that sad. But I think for me, most recently and most memorably, I cried quite quite a lot at Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I don't know why, because it's not necessarily completely sad, but there were parts of it that made me quite sad and tearful, and I did have a few tears in my eyes. And as I've said numerous times about this book, I read it while listening to the soundtrack that was made for the book, because the book is about a songwriter, so the songs were actually made into actual songs. So I listened to that, because you can download it from iTunes, whilst I was reading the book, and that yeah, music affects me quite a lot, so I did really find that quite a great way to read the book. Next up is Road Trip, your favourite series of more than 3 books. Well, I'm afraid I've got quite a few here, so I'm going to cheat lots and mention a few. I won't go into detail about them because you've heard me waffle about them for ages. But firstly, The Arcana Chronicles by Cressley Cole, which is Poison Princess, Endless Night and Dead of Winter so far, and there's more, and I love them. All about tarot cards. I'm loving the Saga graphic novels. I definitely recommend them, and they're brilliant, so that's my second. And then my third, with 3 books out so far, is Morgan Rhodes' Fallen Kingdom series, and I am loving that as well. So that's my cheat, I'm afraid, but they are my favourites at the moment. Next up is Flashback, your favourite book of about 5 years ago. I'm rubbish because I didn't join Goodreads and start really looking into what books I was reading till quite recently, but if I'm thinking back, maybe The Kite Runner and 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, or I think around that time I was reading quite a lot of Jodi Picoult. So maybe those 2 authors, I was reading quite a lot of those books. Getting Back Together, a book that you can't stop rereading. I'm not, apart from school, which was made to, I don't think I've ever reread a book. Yeah, I'm not a rereader, I'm afraid, sorry. Next is Wedding, a book that is really special to you. Yeah. Maybe not a popular opinion, but the Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer is definitely a book that is special to me because, funnily enough, seeing as this is a question for Wedding, my husband, who was my boyfriend at, well, when I started reading these, he was just my boyfriend, knew I loved reading and knew I was struggling. I was having a bit of a slump, couldn't find any books that I really liked, and this was way before anyone had even heard of them. I'd heard nobody ever talking about them. I mean, this was as they were published, and he went into a bookstore, had a look round, knew I liked paranormal, vampire type books, and he found me Twilight and bought it for me, and so my romance began again with books. So this is really special to me because it brings back really good memories. Next up is Moment of Triumph, the longest book you've ever read. I don't know if this counts, but Bone by Jeff Smith is a massive book and is 1,332 pages of pure genius. Death Scene, book you'd wish you'd had ended differently. Allegiant. Funeral, Best with the Worst or Best Epilogue. I couldn't think of one for this, so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to abstain. I can never do a full tag without there being one question that I just don't think I can answer, so I'm really sorry I can't answer this one. And then the next and last is the end credits. Who do you tag? So I've got a bit of a list here. I'm going to tag Collie of the Wobbles, Cold Tea and Crumbs, Time to Read, Hope Ortego, Oh It's Mandy, Sarah Talks Books, or Sarah Types. Oh, I'm rubbish at this. You need to tell me what is your name, please, so I don't ruin it. But I think it's Sarah or Sarai Talks Books, Book Towers, and Mama Reads. So I look forward to seeing all of your versions of this tag, and again, thank you to Jenni King for creating it, and yeah, apologies I wasn't tagged, but I wanted to do it. Okay, anyway, bye for now, Booktube.